there, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and today I am going to walk you through basic image tracing in the free version of Silhouette Studio. So there are some limitations to the free version as far as tracing goes, but overall it works pretty well, and we're going to talk about how to do it and then what types of images it works well for. So you'll see here I've got 3 different images waiting to be traced, and this first one, basically to open those, you just go to File, Open, and then you just navigate into on your computer to find where they are and then open them into the file. And then if you're going to do multiples, you would go File, Merge rather than File, Open. Like if you want several on one canvas, if you open them each as File, Open, it's going to open as separate tabs. So just be aware of that. But first, let's talk about Trace, the Trace tool, and where it is. So over here in the right-hand toolbar, you will see this icon that apparently is supposed to be a butterfly. I think it looks like a piece of toast in a box, so I call it the toast icon in my head. But I guess it's a butterfly. So you would click on that, and usually it'll close your other windows, but I'm going to close that window. And it'll open the Trace panel here. And in the free version, your only option is this single butterfly option, which is Trace or Toast. If you upgrade your version of Silhouette Studio, like you purchase Designer Edition or higher, you will get additional trace options. There's also Trace by Color and then Magnet Trace, which will give you the ability to trace more complicated images. But with this basic Trace version, there are certain things you can do that work really well. So with an image like you see here, the heart and the love, this is a really simple image. It's got 2 colors in it, and they are not touching each other. So because of that, we should be able to trace both the heart and the black love, even though they are colors, different colors. Shouldn't make a difference. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to click on Select Trace Area. My cursor changes to little crosshairs here, and then what I do is I just click and drag to select the entire thing. And what turns yellow is what the software is currently tracing. And there are 2 options, like solid fill and outline. I don't think outline works well at all as far as this trace panel goes. So, because you can see how, like, if you start messing with the threshold, which is traditionally what you do when things aren't tracing correctly, it doesn't work real well. You can see it's having a lot of trouble. Like the yellow is just sort of picking up tiny bits. So I'm going to go back to solid fill just to get a better and easier result. So with threshold, that is what the slider that you kind of mess with the most if something isn't being traced properly. Basically, the threshold is sort of the tool that's saying like the contrast threshold basically of the image. So the lower it is, the further down we go. Like if I pull it to the left, you'll see it still has the black love traced, but it loses the red heart because the black is the thing that contrasts the most with the background. Now if we drag it all the way down to 0, it's going to lose everything, but if you see as I pull it up, it's got the black love, and then it's going to grab the heart. And then if we went all the way to the top, it's going to just grab the whole thing, and then it's just a big square, and we don't need that. So I'm going to go kind of in the middle. The despeckle threshold would be if you have a bunch of like little dots that kind of show up randomly, which can happen with images, especially if they're lower resolution, and you don't want to see those dots, then you would start to increase the despeckle threshold to try to get rid of any random dots that are showing up. High pass filter, I just don't think is really necessary for the basic trace version, so we're just going to ignore that. And then down on the bottom, you'll see there are 3 choices. You can trace the outer edge, or you can trace and detach. Now trace would trace it exactly as you see it right now. Trace outer edge would only trace the outline. So we would lose all of the loops, like the inside loops in the letters. You would just be getting the outline. Sometimes that can be really helpful. And then trace and detach generally is used for an image where, say, you have like multiple small images on like in one image, like you have 6 hearts or something, and you really want each one to be an individual heart. You don't want 6 all stuck together. Then you would trace and detach. So it would trace each one individually, and then you can move them individually once you actually trace it. So that can be helpful, especially for like print then cut images in particular, if you're trying to make stickers or something. But for right now, I'm just going to trace. So I'm going to just click on trace. It goes away. And then hopefully you can see there is now a red outline around the love. It's a little tricky. If I click and drag this off, you will see that it is now traced. So that's what we want. That's fantastic. However, we want to change the colors. But before we do this, I'm going to click this to grab it, and I'm going to move it just off here to the side because I want to talk about these other images. With the basic trace tool, what we just did, which was like an image with different colors, but they were not attached to each other, that works well with the basic trace tool. Other multicolor images like this one, where they are all touching each other, that really only works with the basic trace tool if you just want the outline of the image. So let's see if we go select trace area and I click and drag over this. Now it's only reading like half of the image. You see, like, it's not getting these lower ones. So if we mess with the threshold, if I start dragging it up, it's going to start picking those up. And once we have all of it, then it's good to go. But you can see that it doesn't have the ability to like separate the colors. It really only can do the outline of the entire thing. Now that's a cute flower shape, so you know, you might want to have that, and that would be a great image to do that with. But that is a disadvantage for this basic trace tool with multicolored images. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to drag this guy off. And then the other thing that this tool can do well is it can trace black and white line images, basically because there's a high contrast with them. So and really probably any kind of lined images, maybe not necessarily have to be black per se, but it probably needs to be like a darker color. Because you can see it's now picking up all of the lines in this image, and you can even maybe move our threshold up a bit to smooth it out a little bit, because yeah, it's helping, because down here it was getting real jaggedy. And so it works well for this kind of an image too. And that's about it. Anything that's more complicated than that, it is not going to work well with. So be aware of that. I would also suggest that you try to have your images be fairly high resolution. So internet resolution is 72 dots per inch, which is a very low resolution. Print resolution is 300 dots per inch, or 600 dots per inch now. And dots per inch refers to the number of pixels, like squished in an inch. So pixels are like the little individual dots of color that work together to make up a colored image. So the higher the resolution of your image that, say, you download off the internet, for example, the better off you are. So if you can find out what the size is, the bigger the size. So like sometimes on those free clip art sizes, you'll have the option to like download it as 300 by 300 or 600 by 600 or 900 by 900. The higher the resolution, the larger the number, the better off you are. And I always suggest that you have it be 800 to 1000 pixels by 800 to 1000 pixels or more in order to get the highest resolution you possibly can. You can try tracing a 300 pixel by 300 pixel image. It may not turn out real well because that's a pretty low resolution. That's a very small size. So just bear that in mind. All right, so moving on here. We've got our traced heart and love, but right now it's just all one layer. So I've got the whole thing selected. If I go to the fill color over here, which right now is transparent, we have no fill. We just have a line color, which is red, which is right next to it if you see the red box here. If we go to fill and fill this with, say, black, the entire thing is one color. And that's not what we want. It would work, you know, if you're good with that, like you just want to cut it out of one color, great. But what if you don't? What if you want to make it into different colored layers? Well, here's how you do that. So you would right click on this and go to Release Compound Path. Let me undo that for a second. You can also do that by going to Object up here at the top, Release Compound Path. So there are two ways to do it. And you'll notice, hopefully, let me zoom in a bit, that like the inside loops are now their own shape. The word is its own shape, and then the heart is its own shape. So each cut is like its own cut line, so to speak. So if we click on the heart, and it's a little bit tricky, you got to grab just the line, go back over to the fill color and then hit red. It's going to just fill the heart. Now we can click on the love, and this is just the outline of the word, not the loops. We can click on black to fill that, and now it's filling the entire thing because it's not recognizing the loop as like a separate item. So it's kind of like when you release the compound path, you get the outlines and then you get the insides, if that makes sense, as separate paths. So if I click on the loop path, we can fill this with white if it's going to help you in your brain remember what this looks like. Realistically, however, it doesn't really matter because if you look closely, the inside still has those cut lines, the red outline. So if we went to send this to our machine, it would actually cut these areas anyway. So you would get the loops cut out of your love, whether you change the fill color of the inside loops or not. Hopefully that makes sense. But if you're like me, and sometimes that gets confusing, I think it's easier to just change it. So I've clicked on that loop. I'm going to go to the fill color box and I'm going to make it white. And then you do the same thing, and it's a little tricky to grab like just these outlines. Oh boy, like really tricky sometimes. There we go. Okay, and so now we have our red heart and our black love with the white loops. And the white loops are really just for it's like being able to see what it looks like. Now, one thing I would suggest with an image like this is that you group the loops and the outline of the word together so that if you move something around, which Lord knows I probably would accidentally move it, and leave one of the inside loops behind. So then go up to the upper toolbar and click on this icon, which is group. And so that's basically it. We have now traced an image and broken it apart and then changed the colors of the different layers to create two different layers, or actually really three that are, or multiples with the loops, but these have all been grouped into one layer, and then the red heart is its own layer, and we can cut these separately as two different colors. You can also put the square back in by essentially drawing it over here using the drawing tool. You hold down shift while you draw the square, and then you could resize the entire thing if you wanted to. So I did put the square back in, and then I shrunk the entire thing down to make it 4.5 inches to turn it into a card. Well, actually I made 2 cards with it, as you can see here. But you could make a t-shirt or whatever you like out of this cute little design. And so that is the basic image tracing with the free version of Silhouette Studio. I hope this made sense, and I hope it helped you. If you got something out of it, I would really appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. That helps my channel out a lot with the YouTube algorithm and helps promote my channel. These videos do take many hours to put together, so I'd appreciate it if you could do that for me. And also, if you got something out of it, hey, you might want to consider subscribing to my channel. I would love that as well. Thank you so much, and have an amazing day.